Every civilization that reached the stars eventually built the same thing. A map. Not just a collection of star systems and trade routes, but a shared understanding of reality. A way to impose order on the endless dark. Over centuries, that map evolved into something greater. A unified galactic chart, constantly updated by thousands of species across millions of worlds. It was the closest thing the galaxy had to truth. Every known star was catalogued. Every habitable system marked. Every dangerous region flagged with warnings, data, and history. Empires relied on it for expansion. Traders used it for safe passage. Explorers trusted it with their lives. It was perfect. Or at least, it was supposed to be. Because there was one part of the map that didn't make sense. A region so vast it spanned thousands of light years. Completely empty. No stars. No data. No routes. Just nothing. At first glance, it looked like a rendering error. A gap in the system. A failure of long-range scanning. But it wasn't random. The edges were too clean. Too deliberate. A perfect border. As if someone had drawn a line across the galaxy and said, "Not here." The region had a designation, of course. Something clinical. Something neutral. Sector Null 47. But no one called it that. Among pilots, it had a different name. A quieter name. One that wasn't written anywhere official. The Forbidden Zone. Young civilizations always noticed it first. It usually happened the same way. A newly spacefaring species would gain access to the galactic network. An overwhelming flood of knowledge, routes, star charts, and histories far beyond anything they had imagined. They would study it, fascinated, learn it, trust it, and then, eventually, they would see it. That empty space. That impossible absence. And they would ask the question every older species had learned not to ask. What's there? The answers, when they came, were always the same. Deflections. It's uncharted. Data corruption. Old mapping errors. Sometimes even humor. Nothing worth your time. But never. Not once. A real explanation. And that was the first warning. Because in a galaxy where information was everything, silence meant something. The second warning was behavior. Trade routes curved around the region in unnatural arcs, adding weeks, sometimes months, to travel times just to avoid crossing even its outer edges. Exploration vessels plotted courses that made no logical sense, zigzagging across sectors instead of taking direct paths. Even military fleets, armadas capable of facing entire empires, refused to enter that space. Not avoided. Refused. And no one questioned it. Not openly. There were, of course, rumors. There always are. Some said it was a graveyard, an ancient battlefield where a war so destructive had erased entire star systems, leaving behind only empty space. Others believed it was a natural anomaly, a region where physics itself broke down, where stars couldn't form and navigation systems failed. A few whispered something stranger, that the space wasn't empty at all, that it was hidden. But the oldest civilizations, the ones that had seen the rise and fall of empires, didn't spread rumors. They enforced silence. Quietly. Efficiently. Any attempt to investigate the region beyond a certain threshold was discouraged. Then restricted. Then erased. Navigation data would vanish. Logs would be classified. Missions would be reassigned without explanation. Not violently. Not publicly. Just removed. As if they had never existed. In a distant trade hub orbiting a dying star, a conversation took place that would later be remembered, though never officially recorded. A young pilot, fresh from a newly inducted species, sat across from an older navigator whose kind had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. The pilot pointed to a holographic projection of the galactic map. "To here," he said, zooming in on the blank region. "Why is this empty?" The older navigator didn't answer immediately. He simply stared at the map. Then, slowly, he reached out and deactivated the projection. The stars vanished, leaving only darkness between them. "Some places," he said quietly, "are left blank on purpose. That doesn't make sense, the pilot replied. If it's dangerous, mark it. If it's unknown, explore it. The navigator looked at him then. Really looked at him. With something that wasn't quite fear, but close. You think this map shows you everything? He asked. It's the most complete system in the galaxy. No, the navigator said softly. It's the most approved system in the galaxy. The distinction hung in the air. What's that supposed to mean? Another pause. Then the older one leaned closer, lowering his voice. It means, he said, that what you're looking at isn't a gap. It's a boundary. The pilot laughed at first. A boundary? In open space? Between stars that belonged to no one? It sounded absurd. Until he noticed something he hadn't before. The stars near the edge of the forbidden zone weren't random. They formed a curve. A line. Not perfectly straight, but consistent enough to suggest intention. As if the galaxy itself had been divided. Who would draw a boundary like that? He asked. The navigator didn't answer. Instead, he stood up. Conversation over. But as he turned to leave, he said one last thing. Don't fly near it. That was all. No explanation. No story. Just a warning. Over time, the pilot would hear similar things. Different voices. Different species. Same message. Avoid it. Ignore it. Don't ask. And eventually, he stopped asking. Just like everyone else. Because that's how the Forbidden Zone worked. Not through force. Not through visible threat. But through something far more effective. Unspoken understanding. A shared instinct that crossing that line, whatever lay beyond it, wasn't worth the risk. But there was one detail, one small, almost insignificant detail, that never appeared on the official maps. Not in the data. Not in the logs. Not anywhere that could be verified. Only in whispers. In half-finished conversations. In the uneasy silence of those who knew more than they were willing to say. A name. Not a designation. Not a code. A word. Ancient. Simple. Human. Because while the maps showed nothing, and the records said nothing, and the galaxy refused to talk about it, there was still one truth that refused to disappear. A truth buried so deep that most civilizations treated it like myth. Like something that used to exist. Long ago. Before the galaxy became stable. Before the maps were finalized. Before the silence. A species that had once expanded like all the others. Curious. Restless. Unstoppable. And then, gone. Or so everyone believed. But sometimes, when navigation systems glitched near the edge of the Forbidden Zone, when signals flickered in ways they shouldn't, when sensors picked up echoes that couldn't be explained, one word would appear. Not in any known format. Not in any known language. But somehow, understood. A single identifier. A single warning. Or maybe, a claim. Human space. And that was why the maps went silent. Not because there was nothing there, but because no one dared to write down what was. Curiosity had always been the beginning of every great discovery. And every great disaster. The exploration vessel Astravale was built for one purpose. To go where others wouldn't. It wasn't the largest ship in the fleet, nor the most heavily armed. Its hull wasn't designed for war, and its systems weren't optimized for combat. Instead, it carried something far more valuable. Sensors. Deep-range scanners capable of reading anomalies across light years. Data cores built to process the unknown. Laboratories designed to study phenomena no one else had dared to approach. It was a ship of questions. And the Forbidden Zone was the biggest unanswered question in the galaxy. The mission wasn't official. At least, not in the way most exploration assignments were. There was no public announcement. No shared logs across the galactic network. No oversight from the major councils that governed interstellar travel. Just a quiet authorization. A sealed directive. And a destination that didn't exist on any approved route. Captain Alara then read the coordinates again, even though she already knew them by memory. Edge of Sector Null 47, she murmured. The Forbidden Zone. Around her, The bridge of the Ustra Vale hummed with controlled activity. Her crew moved with focus, not fear, but there was tension in the air. Subtle. Unspoken. They all knew where they were going. They just didn't fully understand what that meant. Last chance to turn back, her second officer said, half joking, half serious. Ilara didn't smile. If we turn back now, she replied, we'll be just like everyone else. Still alive? Someone muttered from the navigation console. A few quiet laughs followed. But no one disagreed. The journey to the edge of the forbidden zone was uneventful. Too uneventful. The stars remained stable. Navigation systems functioned normally. No anomalies, no distortions, no signs that they were approaching one of the most avoided regions in the galaxy. It felt wrong. Like walking toward a storm and seeing clear skies. Approaching boundary coordinates, the navigator announced. Ilara leaned forward slightly. Define boundary. A pause. That's the problem, Captain, the navigator said. There's nothing here. No markers. No changes. According to our instruments, it's just space. Of course it was. That's what made it unsettling. Proceed, Ilara ordered. The ship crossed the line. Nothing happened. No alarms. No system failures. No sudden of alien fleets or hidden defenses. Just space. Normal, empty, silent space. For a moment, the tension on the bridge eased. Maybe it really is just a mapping gap, one of the crew said. Or the galaxy's biggest overreaction, another added. Ilara didn't respond. Because something felt off. Not wrong. Just different. Run a full scan, she said. Already doing it, the science officer replied. So far, everything's within expected parameters. Expected. That word didn't belong here. They continued deeper. Hours passed. Then something changed. Not dramatically. Subtly. Captain, the comms officer said slowly, I'm picking up signals. Ilara turned. From where? Everywhere. That wasn't an answer. Clarify. They're not directional, the officer said, adjusting controls. It's like background noise, but structured. Language? Ilara asked. Multiple, the science officer said, now focused on her own console. Dozens. Maybe more. A chill moved through the bridge. Play it. The speakers came alive. At first, it was just static. Then, fragments. Requesting assistance. Coordinates corrupted. We shouldn't have come here. Turn back. Voices overlapped. Different tones. Different species. Some calm. Some panicked. Some fading. Distress calls. Old ones. Very old. How many? Ilara asked. The answer came quietly. Hundreds. The signals weren't recent. Some were decades old. Others, centuries. A few couldn't even be dated. As if they existed outside of time. Why are they still transmitting? Someone whispered. No one had an answer. They pressed on. Because turning back now would mean admitting something they weren't ready to accept. That the rumors were real. That the silence had a reason. And that they had just ignored it. The deeper they went, the more reality began to shift. Not break. Shift. Stars that had been stable moments ago flickered slightly on sensors. Distances between known points fluctuated by small but measurable margins. Navigation systems recalculated constantly. Captain, our position isn't holding, the navigator said. We're drifting. We're not moving, Ilara replied. I know, he said. But according to our instruments, we are. That didn't make sense. It didn't have to. Then they saw it. At first, it was just a shadow on the edge of their visual range. A distortion against the star field. Zoom in, Ilara ordered. The image sharpened. And the bridge fell silent. Ships. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Floating in space. Not in formation. Not in battle positions. Just there. Drifting. But not randomly. held in place by something unseen. Identify them, Ilara said. The science officer's voice trembled slightly. I can't. Try. I am, she replied. But they're from different civilizations. Different eras. Some of these designs are centuries old. A graveyard. But not one created by destruction. There were no visible signs of combat. No hull breaches. No scorch marks. No debris fields. Just intact ships. Empty. Silent. Waiting. Life signs. Ilara asked. None. Power readings. Minimal. Some residual energy, but nothing active. How did they all end up here? No answer. Only questions. The Astravale moved slowly into the field. Past ships that had once carried explorers, traders, maybe even entire crews full of hope and curiosity. Now, nothing. Just echoes. Captain, the comms officer said again, voice tighter this time. The signals, they're getting stronger. Of course they were. They were at the source. And then, one signal changed. It wasn't fragmented. It wasn't broken. It was clear. Stable. Deliberate. Put it through, Ilara said. Her voice steady despite the tension gripping the room. The static faded. The overlapping voices disappeared. And for the first time since they had entered the forbidden zone, there was silence. Clean. Absolute. Then a voice spoke. Not through the speakers alone, but through every system on the ship. Through the air itself. Calm. Controlled. Unmistakably intentional. You've come farther than most. No one moved. No one breathed. Ilara felt her pulse in her ears. Identify yourself, she said, forcing the words out. A pause. Not hesitation. Consideration. Then, that depends. The voice didn't change. Didn't rise. Didn't threaten. But something about it made the entire crew feel observed. Measured. Do you intend to turn back? The question hung in the air. Simple. But heavy. Ilara looked at the drifting ships around them. At the silent graveyard. At the evidence of what happened to those who had come before. Then back at her crew. Waiting. Watching. Trusting her decision. She turned back to the console. And answered. No. For a moment. Nothing. Then the voice returned. Softer. Almost. Disappointed. Then you've come far enough. The lights on the bridge flickered. Not violently. Just enough to remind them. They were no longer in control. And far beyond the drifting graveyard. Something moved. For a long moment after the voice spoke, no one on the Astravale moved. Not because they couldn't, but because something deeper than fear had taken hold. Awareness. The kind that settles in when you realize you are no longer the one in control. The bridge lights flickered once more, then stabilized. Consoles remained active. Systems still responded. But everything felt monitored, measured, allowed. Captain Ilara then straightened slightly, forcing herself to focus. Trace the signal, she ordered. The comms officer hesitated. I can't. Why not? It's not coming from a single source, they said, voice tight. It's everywhere. Inside our systems. Outside the ship. It's like it's already here, the science officer finished quietly. A silence followed that no one wanted to acknowledge. Ilara stepped forward. Identify yourself, she said again, more firmly this time. The response came immediately. Identification is irrelevant. The voice was calm. Not mechanical. Not emotional either. Controlled. Like something that didn't need to prove anything. Ilara narrowed her eyes. Then explain why we're hearing you. A pause. Not hesitation. Deliberation. Because you crossed the boundary. The words settled heavily in the air. Boundary. Not anomaly. Not accident. Something intentional. Who created it? Ilara asked. This time, the pause was longer. And when the voice returned, it was different. Not louder. Not harsher. But heavier. We did. A ripple moved through the crew. No one spoke. No one needed to, because they all understood the implication. We. Ilara repeated carefully. The answer came without delay. Humanity. The word hit like a shockwave. Not because it was unknown, but because it wasn't supposed to be real. Humans were history, an early spacefaring species. Curious, aggressive, unpredictable. They had expanded rapidly, long before the current balance of the galaxy had been established. And then, they had disappeared. No confirmed homeworld. No active colonies. No presence in any modern records. Just fragments of stories. Old data. Half-verified myths. And now, a voice. Claiming to be one of them. That's not possible, someone whispered. The voice responded immediately. And yet, you are here. Ilara forced her thoughts into order. If you're human, she said, then explain this. She gestured toward the drifting fleet outside. Who are they? A pause. Then, they are what happens when curiosity ignores warning. The answer sent a chill through the room. They're not destroyed, the science officer said quickly. Their ships are intact. No battle damage, no signs of impact. Correct. Then what happened to them? Ilara demanded. Another pause. Then, we stopped them. The simplicity of the answer made it worse. Stopped them how? Someone asked. The voice didn't respond immediately. And when it didn't answer the question. Your species is not the first to reach this boundary. Images suddenly flashed across the main display. Not data. Not files. Memories. Ships entering the region, different designs, different civilizations. Some cautious. Some confident. Some armed. All crossing the same invisible line. All continuing forward. All disappearing. The images faded. Silence returned. They didn't listen, the voice said quietly. Ilara felt her grip tighten. Listen to what? She pressed. The response came softer this time. Almost distant. To reason. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Reason doesn't erase entire fleets, the second officer said. The voice didn't react. Didn't defend. It simply continued. Long before your time, this galaxy followed a pattern. The display shifted again. Stars. Expanding territories. Civilizations spreading outward. Faster. Further. Competing. Then. War. Not one. Many. Systems burning. Planets shattered. Entire regions collapsing into chaos. The images stopped. And the silence that followed felt heavier than anything before. Expansion without restraint leads to collapse, the voice said. We learned that too late. Ilara's voice was steady, but only just. You're saying humans caused this. A pause. Then, we were part of it. The admission hung in the air. Not defensive. Not ashamed. Just factual. What changed? Ilara asked. Another pause. Longer this time. As if the answer required more than simple explanation. Observation, the voice said. Time. The display flickered once more, showing the same cycles. Expansion. Conflict. Collapse. Again. And again. Across different species. Different eras. The same pattern repeating. We realized something. The voice continued. Left unchecked, every civilization reaches the same conclusion. Ilara's eyes narrowed. And what's that? The answer came without hesitation. That survival requires dominance. A cold silence followed, because everyone on that bridge knew. It was true. And you decided to stop it. Ilara asked. We decided to contain it. The word felt precise. Chosen. Contain how? She pressed. The answer was simple. By drawing a line. Ilara looked out at the endless field of silent ships. The boundary. The forbidden zone. This entire region, she said slowly, you created it. Yes. To keep others out. Yes. And what's beyond it? Someone asked. The question slipped out before anyone could stop it. The voice didn't answer immediately. And for the first time, there was something like weight in the silence. When it finally spoke, its tone had changed. Not in volume, but in meaning. Not everything needs to be discovered. That wasn't an answer. It was a warning. Ilara stepped closer to the console. We didn't come here to expand, she said. We came to understand. A pause. Then, so did they. The words hit harder than any threat. The captain's gaze hardened. Then help us understand, she said. Another pause. Longer. Deeper. And when the voice returned, it carried something new. Not hostility. Not anger. But something far more unsettling. Finality. You already do. Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems shifted. Not shut down. Not attacked. Adjusted. As if something had just made a decision. And outside, at the far edge of the drifting fleet, something moved. The moment something moved beyond the graveyard, every system on the Astravale reacted. Not with alarms, but with hesitation. As if the ship itself didn't know how to process what it was seeing. Contact, detected, the navigator said slowly. Range. Ilara asked. A pause. Unknown. That answer shouldn't have been possible. Everything had a range. Everything could be measured. Except this. Outside the viewport, beyond the silent fleet of abandoned ships, space itself seemed to bend. Not visibly at first. Just enough to distort the stars behind it. A ripple. A presence. Something massive, far larger than any vessel they had encountered, shifting just out of full perception. Magnify, Ilara ordered. The display attempted to focus. Failed. Adjusted. Failed again. It's not locking, the science officer said. Our sensors can't define it. It's like it doesn't want to be seen, someone whispered. The voice returned. Calm. Unchanged. But now. Closer. You have reached the limit. Ilara didn't take her eyes off the distortion. What is that? She asked. A pause. Then. A reminder. The word sent a quiet tension through the crew. A reminder of what? She pressed. The answer came without hesitation. Why this boundary exists. Outside, the drifting fleet began to move. Slowly. Deliberately. Ships that had remained motionless for centuries adjusted their positions, aligning themselves in a pattern that became clearer with each passing second. Not random. Not chaotic. A formation. A wall. Stretching across the invisible line they had crossed. They are forming a barrier, the second officer said. Not just a barrier, the science officer added, her voice tight. A perimeter. Ilara understood immediately. They weren't being attacked. They were being contained. You said you stopped them, Ilara said, her tone sharp. Is this how? The voice didn't deny it. Yes. The single word carried more weight than any explanation. What happens if we keep going? Someone asked quietly. This time, the voice didn't respond immediately. And that silence was louder than anything it could have said. Ilara stepped forward. Answer the question. A pause. Then. You won't. Not you shouldn't. Not you can't. You won't. Is that a threat? She asked. The reply came instantly. No. Another pause. Then. It's an outcome. The distinction sent a chill through the entire bridge. Outside, the distortion shifted again. Closer now. Larger. For a fraction of a second, the sensors caught something. A shape. Not a ship. Not a structure. Something else. Then it vanished from the display entirely. What did we just see? The navigator asked. No one answered. Because no one knew. The voice continued. Every civilization reaches this point. The words were steady. Certain. Curiosity. Expansion. The need to understand what lies beyond. Ilara clenched her jaw. And you decided that ends here. We decided it doesn't go further. That's not your decision to make, the second officer snapped. For the first time, the voice didn't respond immediately. And when it did, there was something new in it. Not anger, not emotion, but something closer to certainty. It already is. The lights dimmed slightly. Not enough to cause panic. Just enough to remind them. They were not in control of this space. You're controlling everything here, Ilara said. The ships, the signals, even us. We are maintaining balance. By trapping anyone who comes here. Another pause. Then, by giving them a choice. The words echoed in the room. A choice. What choice? Ilara demanded. The answer came slowly, deliberately. Turn back. A beat. Or remain. No one spoke, because everyone understood what remain meant. Ilara looked out at the drifting ships again. Different designs. Different civilizations. All silent. All still. They chose to stay, she said quietly. Yes. Why? The voice didn't answer immediately. And when it did, it wasn't what she expected. Some believed they could go further. A pause. Some believed they were ready. Another. Some simply refused to accept limits. Ilara felt something tighten in her chest. And were any of them right? The silence that followed was absolute. Then, no. The word landed like a final verdict. Outside, the distortion pulsed once more. Closer than before. Close enough that the stars behind it disappeared completely for a brief moment. Whatever it wasn't just watching. It was aware. The crew felt it. Not through instruments. Not through data. But instinct. A presence. Vast. Patient. Waiting. Captain. The navigator whispered. I know, Ilara replied. She turned back to the console. To the voice, she said. If we turn back, you'll let us go. The answer came immediately. Yes. And if we don't? A pause. Longer than any before. Then, you will stay. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Stayed. Ilara closed her eyes for a brief moment. Thinking. Calculating. But deep down, she already knew. She looked at her crew. Fear. Curiosity. Defiance. All of it present. All of it human. In its own way. We came here for answers, she said quietly. No one argued. And we got them. That was harder to accept. Outside, the silent fleet held its position. The barrier complete. The line drawn. Ilara took a slow breath. Then gave the order. Set course. A pause. The navigator hesitated. Captain? She opened her eyes. Back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the distortion receded. The pressure in the air lifted. The stars stabilized. The barrier didn't disappear. It simply opened. A path forming through the drifting ships. Clear. Unobstructed. Allowed. The Astra veil turned. Slowly at first. Then faster. Leaving the boundary behind. As they crossed back over the invisible line, the voice spoke one final time. Now you understand. Ilara didn't respond immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the stars ahead. Stable. Normal. Safe. Understand what? She asked quietly. A pause. Then, why no one enters human space? The signal cut. Clean. Final. Behind them, the stars shifted. The boundary disappeared. And the forbidden zone returned to silence.